you'll see that we are going to be doing side by side or top and bottom Spanish and English. All right. For the most part, it'll be Spanish on the left-hand side and English on the right-hand side, or Spanish on top and English on the bottom. We'll go through these. This is just our entry slide here. We started with a set of group of people last time we were together, and these are the same ones. Just to remind folks, we agreed to be present and engaged as much as possible. The one mic rule is just one person speaking at a time. We're trying to listen to understand, not just listen to respond. Step up, step back just means that if you've been talking a lot, to create space for other folks, and if you haven't been bringing forth your voice and experience, to take a step forward. Take care of yourselves. We're all trying to do this during a pandemic with many other things that are going on. So please make sure you take care of yourself. As we're seeing, Zoom is wonderful, but it is not perfect. So I ask you to be really flexible, that some things may work directly and some things may need a little bit more work. Confidentiality, that what we say here, even though this is a public space and we're recording and we're going to be doing some sharing, the reason that people share is to help us understand. And so when we walk away, let's take the lesson, the thing that they're trying to help us understand, not the details of what they share. All right, from time to time, we'll check in on these to make sure we're doing well with them. And, if there's no comments on these, I will forward. So we've done our introductions there. We shared your name, how you're connected to Chelsea, and your favorite food not from your culture. This is our agenda. So we've done our welcome and agreements, done introductions, sharing the agenda. We'll do a quick review of some of the things we talked about in meeting number 1. And then we have 2 focus areas that we are going to be working on today. The first is small business. The second is workforce development. And then we're going to have some time today for you to do some initial strategy development. What might be some strategies that would be important to address these issues? And then we'll do some initial kind of refining. What are the ones that are standing out for you? What do you think we should be thinking about as important to move forward? This is just an initial one. While this information is fresh in our heads, we'll come back to this with some additional data as we go forward. Any questions so far? We will take a break in the middle, so you'll have some time to, send that email, check the pot you've got on the stove, make sure your sambusa delivery is showing up, whatever it is that you're going to need to do, you'll have a little bit of time for. All right, so just to remind folks, what is ARPA? ARPA is the American Rescue Plan Act. There's almost $2 trillion that are being dispersed. Chelsea's not getting all of those $2 trillion, but a significant piece of that money. And really it's supposed to help the country recover from the devastating impacts of the pandemic. And folks know that there's money being dispersed at the state, the local, territorial, and tribal government levels. Of that money, City of Chelsea is expected to get about $40 million. A large chunk of that, $25 million, is going to go towards revenue loss. So what the city would have been able to do with money, but that they lost during COVID, revenue that wasn't gained. And about $15 million of these funds will be dedicated to community initiatives that are going to be identified through this community decision-making process, meaning that this body will, at the end, have made a set of recommendations to the city manager for what these dollars should be invested in. And I want to make sure that I say that every time, that our role is to decide on what for investment.
Sí, yo, Wendy, la estoy escuchando.
The Community Advisory Committee is this made up of community stakeholders and residents, and really to ensure that we have an equitable, transparent, and accountable distribution of these ARPA funds. So we'll be doing this process to help make decisions about what the recommendations are for investment, and also that you'll be able to hear from time to time on a regular basis how the city is going about making those investments happen, and really to be the voice of the city. So part of what you're doing is not only bringing your expertise and the wonderful experiences that you have, but also you'll be hearing from all the community engagement that's happening across the city and looking at data to help us put together the best set of recommendations for the community. And then last of this $15 million is really dedicated to initiatives and priorities developed by this engagement process. So not just what this committee thinks, but also all of the inputs that are going to come from the focus groups and key informant interviews, community survey, community meetings with community-based organizations. And this can go into areas such as housing, food security, workforce development, entrepreneurship and small business, environmental health and open space, behavioral and mental health. And these are some of the areas that we'll be looking at. Obviously today, we're going to be looking at small business and workforce development. Are there any questions about, just that was a quick review of what we did in the last session and kind of understanding the role and what this community advisory committee is doing. Any questions before we move forward? Okay. I'm just going to be checking from time to time because we've got 2 screens of folks going so far. Great. All right. We did also have a kind of a process. This one's going to be on 2 separate slides. I'll go back and forth to make sure that folks can follow along. This is the English slide first. I'm sorry, this is the Spanish slide first. And it's just about describing the process. So I'll show you the English slide there. The same thing. In that first part, we're talking about community input. So we'll be looking at the existing data. We'll be looking at focus groups, the key informant interviews that I mentioned, some community meetings, and the survey. And that's all about taking in information. Then this community advisory committee is going to review that data and the themes from the community input, and having taken in all of that information, decide what are the priorities for this investment? What are the priorities for this investment? And then from there, decide what are the strategies that we should be funding and make some funding recommendations. These funding recommendations are, again, to tell the city manager what you would want to see these dollars invested in, not projects, but strategies. And then the city will go about the process of, whether it's through an RFP process or some other procurement process to get those dollars out to the community and get the services and whatever else the committee has decided on to happen. Tom, I just want to see if you want to say anything here about the process or the role of the city or anything.
No, I think you accurately described it.
All right. That's what I'm going for, accurately described. That's good. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate you. So we have a committee process. We've got a set of meetings. Last time was meeting number 1. It was basically an overview. Today is meeting number 2, workforce development and small business. Coming up will be meeting number 3, where we'll look at housing and food security. And meeting number 4, we'll be looking at behavioral, mental, and environmental health. And in each of these 3 next meetings, so including today and the 2 after today, we're going to really be looking at reviewing some data. We'll have a little bit of data today, examine themes from focus groups and interviews and community-based organization meetings, gather and define some of the priorities and do some initial refining. So kind of what we saw on the agenda for today. Then in the meetings after that, we'll refine all of that to finalize a set of priorities and then a set of strategies, and then make some decisions about how dollars will be assigned based on those strategies. Those 3 meetings will be a lot of decision making. So one of the things that we're hoping to do along the way in all of these meetings is to build some rapport with each other, to build some trust and community with one another, and find ways to see the varying perspectives of the folks who are part of the group, and begin to build the trust that will allow us to make collective decisions for Chelsea, and not just from the organizations we sit, or the neighborhoods that we're a part of, or any of the other ways in which we are separated. Any questions about these meetings that we're going to have? Okay. Last, just that we did meet and will meet again with Chelsea City Council. We'll do a public meeting at the end of the process, which will be in Spanish, and there'll be some social media that will also allow people to provide additional input. All right, without further ado, I'm going to move us forward into thinking about small business. And we're going to, today is a little bit heavier in terms of the presentation. So we'll show you a bunch of information. And then we're going to ask you to think about, like, what are the other concerns and thoughts? What are the other things we should be capturing in this? What do we need to know? And we'll go from there. But I'm sensing we should probably take a little bit of a stretch break here. So let's do 3 minutes. All right, welcome back. Just going to welcome folks back here. If you can turn on your cameras, that'll let me know that you are back, and know that we are up and going here. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides again. Assuming that it will let me do that. Come on, I've been good to you. You can be good to me. Wonderful. All right. Let's see if we can get this shared and going. There we go. 1, boom. I believe, yes, you're seeing the slide by itself and not the presenter mode. Awesome, great. Thank you, those of you who were kind enough to shake your heads. Yes, that helps me to know where I am. Wonderful. So we're talking about small business. I'm going to do a few slides of information. This is some information from data that's widely available, as well as some of the themes and what we heard from some focus groups and key informant interviews. We won't identify who the people are who gave us the information, nor will we say whether it was a focus group or key informant interview. We take all of that community engagement together, and just that's for the anonymity of the people who participated, but know that part of this process is to broaden and get a wide set of people's voices into the process. One of the reasons why we'll have the different community-based organization and community meetings, and the community survey and social media ways to make sure that we get input from all the different corners of Chelsea and all the different people who make up the community as it is. So I'll flip through these, and then I'll give you a chance to ask questions and react as well. So one of the things that we were looking at in terms of small business were that about 94% of businesses in Chelsea are considered small businesses with fewer than 50 employees. This is not a surprise to anybody who knows Chelsea. Lots of small businesses. This number is a bit higher than some other communities, but not terribly so. Small businesses are the backbone of American business, and most businesses would qualify in this definition under 50%. 84% have fewer than 20 employees, and significantly half have fewer than 5 employees, which are considered micro businesses. And about half of these small businesses in the city are Latinx owned. And so that's a particular character of the city different than other places. And so the Latino community is a huge part of small business in the city of Chelsea, something for us to recall as we're walking through some of the barriers that may disproportionately affect a specific population. About 48% of these businesses are concentrated, so nearly half, in 4 industries: retail trade, accommodation and food services, wholesale trade, and healthcare and social assistance. So, this is kind of commerce that folks are familiar with, what you see on the street, little shops and boutiques and so forth. Food service and accommodations, both hotels and other food businesses, and then healthcare and social assistance are a big piece. Not surprising, and a big piece of who the workforce is. And one of the folks that we talked to in one of the focus groups mentioned that 90%, that they know about 90% of everyone here, and that's part of the beauty of Chelsea. Folks really know each other in that business community. Next, Chelsea was described as a small, tight-knit business community that benefited from the accessibility of City Hall and community-driven improvement, that this connection to the city and to City Hall helps to get things done, and that it's easy to get in touch with City Hall and the Chamber of Commerce. I made the correction there, and it did not happen on this slide. So anybody who's with the Chamber of Commerce, this is not a competitor. We do mean the Chamber of Commerce and not the Chamber of Conference. Also, that Chelsea's diversity was highlighted as a strength that supports and adds to the success of city businesses, both supporting and interacting with each other, but also this really rich, diverse pool of employees. And while the city's always been a city of immigrants, there are a lot of folks here that bring with them talent and dedication and a thirst for knowledge. This came up over and over again in the focus groups and key informant interviews, that people really want to be engaged, they really want to be a part of the dynamic business community, and that the business community benefits from that as well as the city benefits from that. All right, so as of August 2020, so this is at the beginning of the pandemic, some of those PPP loans, which were business loans to different kinds of businesses, but basically helping businesses to survive that initial wave of closures and so forth in during the pandemic. Most of these funds were kind of in the mix of industries. Some differences there. Some of the loans are allocated to some of the hardest hit industries. One of the things that we also heard was that, depending on your access to things like computers and online applications and so forth, you might have been less likely to have been able to take advantage of the PPP loans and any of the other benefits because of accessibility issues and folks who are less tax savvy. But one of the interviewees did say that one of the other dynamics here is that we're a community of essential workers, meaning that while in many other cities and towns, a large part of their workforce was working from home, in Chelsea, a large part of the workforce was still working at their places of employment, leaving their homes and going to work. Questions or thoughts on that before we move forward?
Mo,
Yes, go ahead, please, Scott.
one question, Mo. Was there a number of businesses that you guys are basing this off of?
In terms of what?
Other percentages, like how many businesses are we talking about?
I don't have that number, and I'm not sure that, I'll go back and see where there were percentages.
It's fine, we don't have to hold us up there.
No, that's a good question. So part of what we're asking you to do is to ask some of these questions so that we can get those answers for you. So I don't have it here on this slide, but I will endeavor to find out where we got that exact number, and if they gave us an N for the number of businesses. I suspect that it's of the businesses that they were able to get a
Interview, okay, all right,
Yeah.
thanks.
Actually, a lot of those came from census data.
and census data as well. Yeah. Jenny, you're on mute. I think you have your hand up to ask a question.
Yeah, that was me. So my question was in reference exactly with the 425 PPP loans, where the information came from, and if it came from the Small Business Administration, or did it came from somewhere else?
So I believe that it came that wherever who got it from, they would need to get it from the Small Business Administration, because that's who administers this. So even if you went through a different organization, that's where the information comes from. And it was always, all of this has been publicly available data on the PPP loans. Like you can go and look up and see what business got a PPP loan and where it is and how much it is. All of that information has been made public.
Yeah, that's why I asked. It seems a little lower than what I had read before.
So one of the things is that this is as of August 2020, so not 2021. So the first round of these. Well,
So it might be beneficial to indicate that, because with round 2, this number might have been double.
yeah, that's
Also,
why
it also doesn't take in consideration if you did round 1 and then you received additional funding, or added more funding for that round 1 versus receiving a round 2. And some people receive round 1 and 2 plus additional funding in January. So that's why I was asking.
Yeah, that's why this says as of August 2020, which would only have been the first round. But we can see if we can get the data for each of the rounds so you get a more total picture.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. And again, we're asking you to ask us some of these questions so that we can get that information. We can bring that back to you in the deliberations that we're going to be doing in the forthcoming meeting. So appreciate those. And we'll keep going here. I think we looked at the top 3 challenge small businesses face, top 3 challenges small businesses face. Decline in sales due to limited hours and closings. A lot of folks really felt like that was the really cause of the decline. The inability to pay rents because of changes in revenue, and then difficulty hiring essential workers who were concerned about their health and safety, that many folks were, because of their concerns with their health and safety, weren't participating in the job market. And again, this looks like the rest of the country. And this isn't just Chelsea that has this particular issue. So Jenny, go ahead.
So on this area, I think one that might be worth looking into as well is inflation, cost of goods, the cost of products for some of the small businesses is one of the big struggles today, especially with supply chain issues. And, as you are aware, Chelsea is big with restaurants, and going to Restaurant Depot as the point of contact and not finding anything, and you having to pay twice as much for some of the products. So I think it might be worth mentioning that too, or looking into that, particularly for small businesses as well.
Absolutely. It did come up in the conversations as well that folks were saying that not only the cost of goods, but the inability to get the goods that they used to get easily, especially goods from overseas. And, you know, some folks mentioned that they were selling different things that they sold before because of able to get now and what they're able to put out there. So this is a good time to mention that we will make available to everyone the notes from the focus groups and so forth. We have to go through them first to take out any identifying information first, and then we'll make all of that available to you. So you'll get a little bit more of the flavor of what everyone has contributed. Myra, you're on mute.
Sí, solamente estoy de acuerdo con el comentario que hizo Jenny. No, yo soy una propietaria de un restaurante en el centro de la ciudad y eso es uno de los desafíos que nosotros estamos enfrentando ahora. Es la inflación, la alta, la subida de precios en el producto que nosotros utilizamos para el restaurante y la escasez de muchos productos que no se encuentran en ninguno de los lugares. Eso indica de que vendrá un alza de precio y es uno de los desafíos que estamos enfrentando ahora.
Can I ask one of our interpreters to rally that back to us in English? Let's see, Lourdes, are you there?
Can we take a pause? I'm sorry. This isn't how interpretation is supposed to work. Can I just stop here for a second? If you're not fully bilingual in either language, you should choose the channel that you need to listen in. So everybody should be on the same main channel. And if you need simultaneous interpretation for what Maida just said, you need to choose English. When you have the English channel up, when Maida speaks in Spanish, you will hear the English translation.
Thank you.
Otherwise, it's not a fully bilingual space, and,
Yes.
and then you're having consecutive translation, which is totally different.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to hear that in the Spanish channel and did not hear it. That's why I asked for the translation. I suspect others didn't hear it either.
You should ask for you should be using the English channel then. She's using the Spanish channel because the interpreter is interpreting for her into Spanish. You should be choosing the English channel so that when she speaks in Spanish, you hear the English translation.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't hear any English translation. I am on the English channel.
Yep.
So I think that's where the problem lies.
I'm gonna see if we can fix that. All right, let's keep going and we'll see if we can get that fixed before the next comment. All right, trying to get to my screen here. Right. We had a better version of this one, but this is just the unemployment in Chelsea affected during this time frame. You can see that the trend was going down for about 10 years and then rocketed up to a high of 12% during the pandemic, and has started to come down, but hasn't gone down to where it was pre-COVID time. So that's something to continue to remember as we move forward. That while the unemployment rate has started to come down, especially over the course of the last few months, it has not gone down to where it was, and it still is about a little bit more than double what it was before COVID. And that's a really important piece for the ways in which we're trying to address issues of employment, especially the small businesses. Some of the barriers for small business, the perception that small businesses in Chelsea don't benefit from the supports and resources available to large businesses. So large operations some small operations feel isolated from the mainstream programs, particularly during the pandemic, they missed out. Again, this piece that we talked about in terms of language barriers and digital literacy put some folks outside the opportunities that were available. A lot of the applications were on the computer. And so if you don't have this, or you don't have ready access to your financial statements and other things, digitally, it was really difficult to use the existing systems. Todd?
Sorry, where are those? Are those the state unemployment numbers?
Those are, I believe, were the state unemployment numbers. I can go back.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, they are. Yep. Thanks.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
yeah, no worries.
The last numbers were about 6.5% in Chelsea, about twice what they were pre-pandemic.
Latino-owned businesses were described as particularly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and lack of access to resources. Some of the quotes here: what makes small business development challenging is the investment level needed and the undervaluing of Latinx communities systematically. Restaurant restoration initiatives. Not many Latino restaurants were able to take advantage. And again, that language access to the digital divide played a role there, and some of the smaller businesses not being able to take advantage of some of the opportunities that were available. So this was some of the things that were there. Jenny?
So I think on this one, actually, Mo, I think it has to do more with the timeline that was used for the RR for the restaurant restoration initiative, because there were some restaurants that benefit, but because of the timeline, then there were other bigger fishes in the sea that actually took over the funding. So for the little peoples, that came a little too late.
Can you say more about the timeline, Jenny? I just want to understand. It was just being able to act fast, or
Exactly. So
Okay,
for Latino and minorities, there was a 2-week advantage point to be able to apply. However, that information didn't came across to businesses in a timely manner for them to actually take action. By the time they learn about it, everybody else had already been in there, and it was too little too late.
Okay. Thank you for that. And again, Todd, did you have something to add?
Yeah, are we talking about what funding are we talking about for? Is this what the city provided, or is this some other program that you're talking about? I don't quite understand.
Todd, my understanding is that there were some initiatives of the city that were available, but there's also the kind of federal and state level initiatives. Jenny,
So,
speak to that.
Todd, the restaurant restoration initiative is something that was federal funded, and it was for 3 weeks available to restaurant owners.
okay,
to apply.
okay,
So it's separate from Chelsea.
okay. That's my, because I think we had, and Alex can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was my recollection that, you know, we were going to provide, I mean, we ended up providing, I think, help to everybody who applied. So I don't think anybody was turned away in the Chelsea initiative. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I was unaware of you know, anybody, you know, being left behind.
This is different, Todd. This is a different.
What program was that?
Is the restaurant restoration fund.
That was federal.
Yeah, it's a federal fund that the Small Business Administration put out. And it wasn't really from the city.
No, I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've got a question.
Sure.
Alex, can you just weigh in on whether or not on what Todd said about businesses getting, everyone who applied was able to get? don't know if you're there, Alex.
I am, and yes, on the restaurant side, we gave 400,000 to restaurants, and we divided it equally among every applicant.
Right. Raphael?
I know we're still going through this, but I think for us to sort of be able to do forward looking here on how to expend funds, I think a couple of data points that we need that we don't fully have is the number of total small businesses in Chelsea, the percentage of them. We know it's 425, but then we can have an understanding what percentage got PPP loans. To Jenny's point, round one, round two, the extra funding and all that would be useful to know. And how many were able to take advantage of the restaurant restoration benefits, whether it's the federal one or the state ones, so that we can get a sense of what the gap is, what is left, and whether that is an area that we want to invest in. We have done a small program like that in the Shirley Ave neighborhood in Revere, and it was extremely successful, but it was a lot of one-on-one attention to get people, small businesses involved and to meet their particular needs for improvements. So I'm very curious and interested to see what the gap here is.
Yeah. Myra, I think you had your hand up for a comment, and just for the rest of us, if we can go into the English channel, we can hear what Myra is saying.
Mi nombre es Mayra.
My name is Myra, and yes, I'm in agreement with everything that Jenny said. That I feel that in the restaurants, what's missing is that the support in the language, because many owners they don't know how to use the computers or English. They don't know English, so I feel like the majority needs help, especially in education and information, because when they go apply, it was too late for them. I was working with Jenny, and I was able to see this, that there wasn't a lot of time for these small businesses to apply. They didn't have enough time to fulfill all the requirements that were asked. So I am in agreement with Jenny. I would like to know exactly the number of small business, because right now you're only given a percentage. And I know many owners, Latin owners, small business owners, that I've spoken to them, and they never knew what was going on. They never knew about the help. Many of them had to sell or close their restaurants. The restaurant that we bought, we had to buy off them because I was an employee there, and I bought the restaurant because they were afraid that we were all gonna be unemployed. We asked for this loan, and we were able to buy the restaurant. But yes, I am in agreement with Jenny. The micro businesses need help from the city, education support, technical support, and support also in administrative education, because many of us were employees and now we're the owners, and it's a very different role that we are. And I have spoken to Lourdes about this, and I would like this emphasis on this theme.
Thank you. We are actually at a good moment for this, because we're going to ask you to just consider what are some of the additional kind of concerns and issues that we should be thinking about. I'm dropping into the chat a Google Doc, and in that Google Doc, I'll just ask folks in some small groups to add in there any information, any thoughts that we should still be thinking about, any data that you want, any concerns, and what are some of the issues around small businesses that we should still be thinking about. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes or so in that small group to think a little bit about those. and try to add there. We'll give folks like a small group of maybe, I'd say about 4 or 5 people, and give you a chance to have also a conversation about any of the things that you saw. And please add to the Google Doc any of the things that would help us understand some of the issues that from your experience, from what you see, from what you've heard, that small businesses might be facing. So I'm going to just create the rooms really quick and ensure that we have some interpretation in each of the spaces. And good. All right, so let's make sure that we've done the I think we lost a couple of folks there, but we'll get them back once they rejoin. So we're going to give you about 10 minutes or so, go into the document, put the concerns there you have, and you have a chance to also talk with some of the folks who we would ask you to maybe, gain some information from, share some information with. We'll see you back in about 10 minutes. Welcome back. Great. All right. I saw that some groups were able to go into the Google Doc and put in some information, and I saw some other folks were busy talking and didn't put it in the Google Doc, and maybe some folks might have had some difficulty. It doesn't always work for everybody. I just wanted to, if there were any particularly important things or something, an idea that came up in that session that you want to highlight, I'll take 1 or 2 of those. Any highlights from the conversation that you want to make sure come to the surface?
Oh, because it was hard to get access to the shared document, maybe participant can leave the comments on the chat.
In the chat,
and
yeah.
then someone just copy and paste.
Those, yep.
Thank you.
That's a great idea. So if you have some comments and stuff that if your group didn't get a chance to put it in the document, if you could put it in the chat, we will take those. But I just want to hear if there are 1 or 2 comments in terms of what folks talked about, concerns or issues in terms of small businesses that we should continue to talk about, especially if there's anything that we haven't heard already. Anything that came up?
I was on a group with Myra, and she is currently a small business owner in Chelsea, and some of the concerns that she expressed was that there is no training for employees on Safe Serve. She doesn't, also communication with the City Hall is not fluent. She'd like to have more fluent communication with City Hall. The Chelsea Chamber of Commerce, she also stated that the communication was not fluent with the Chelsea Chamber of Commerce. She also explained that, expressed that she would need some training for her staff, and the accounting and financial side of it, she needs a lot of help with, because they're paying a third party extensive amount of money for the accounting, and she would just like to have more open communications to get her flowing in the right direction, moving in the right direction with business, and that she needs a lot more support. And this was Myra, and she is a current business owner in Chelsea.
Thank you. Any other groups, anything else that came up in other groups that you want to highlight or bring up? And obviously, if you can continue to add things in the chat, we'd love to have that. Thank you, group 4.
I just saw technical assistance, and then she also asked about technical assistance as well.
Thank you.
So yes, this is Joan Cromwell, And I always chime in late when we had to go back to the full group, so I always get cut off, which is what happened. But we was in a group with Todd and Naomi, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't name everybody because I can't remember one name. I think it was Ted as well as Jenny. And we thought that more data is needed in order to have this conversation, that we understand inflation and supply chain issues and concerns, but that's kind of a bigger problem than our fix it right here in terms of supply and what's out there for goods. I felt like, because I am not a business owner, I appreciated the conversation because it was kind of like a listening session, and to talk about not so much inflation and supply chain, but what the small businesses are dealing with and what they're faced with, and what does that roadmap to recovery look like, which is why we're here. So it was interesting to hear. I do agree with Todd and the rest of the group that we do need more data, but I also am hearing Jenny and the small business owners in terms of what the roadmap to recovery looks like and what they need.
All right, thank you. And again, as I mentioned, we're going to be making the focus group data available to you all. So you'll get even more voices of small businesses who are part of that focus group who can detail some of, because they talked about exactly some of these things like technical assistance and language and digital access and so forth. So wonderful. Thank you all for those of you who put it in the chat, those of you who put it in the doc, and those of you who listen to and encourage others to share their story. We've got about 30 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we touch on the second topic here that we're focusing on. And so I'm going to move us forward in our agenda to talk about workforce development. And I'm going to, again, share my screen. All right, hopefully that's working right there. Great. So one of the things that we, in terms of workforce development, is really understanding the workforce in Chelsea. This graphic really talks about how many folks in the workforce remain in Chelsea for their employment. That's that 2150 number in the middle. How many folks leave Chelsea to go to work, that 16,360 number on the right-hand side. And then how many people come into Chelsea for work from the outside, that 14,932 number. This gives you a sense of where is it that the workforce is, who is the workforce, and how many folks are working in Chelsea who are from Chelsea. Now, you know, this is not a perfect count or number. It's not off by dozens of percents either. So it's a good approximation of how the workforce moves in Chelsea. And as you're thinking about strategies to address workforce development, it's important to understand where the jobs are that people in Chelsea are going to. All right. We're going to look at some additional data and comments that'll help us to kind of tease out and understand some of the other dynamics in workforce. So barriers to workforce development in Chelsea. One barrier is availability of affordable licensed childcare, named as preventing residents, especially women, from entering the workforce is just a barrier there. One comment was that it costs more to pay for childcare than the person would be making working. And unfortunately, this is a challenge at many levels in the socioeconomic ladder, and certainly for folks who are working class. Childcare supply issues and childcare demand. Lots of women leaving the workforce. They're leaving to take care of their children, and their labor has not been supported or recognized. That's across the board. And then as of June 2021, only 7% of the childcare subsidies have been awarded to Chelsea residents. We're working to get the number on here. What's important to understand is that really the more important number, that's only about a quarter of the folks who need childcare in Chelsea were able to get subsidized childcare of the people who are looking for it. And that's a really small number. It means that, you know, 3/4 of the people who are looking for subsidized childcare could not find it, could not get it. It's a significant gap because, again, that leaves a lot of people not able to enter the workforce as they have to do childcare. Other barriers to workforce, the need for more training and support for licensed providers. This is a strong focus on childcare and awareness about vouchers for families. Chelsea gave a lot of support to small businesses. There were some of that support went to childcare businesses, but there was a feeling that not enough of it and not enough of them were able to get it. I think the number was something like 7 of the businesses supported were childcare businesses. And many people went to more affordable, unlicensed childcare because people had no idea what a voucher was. And so, again, the issue of access and education, even people knowing about vouchers and how to access vouchers for childcare was a challenge when folks were looking for it. And that, and this is a tough one here, but we need to say that there are folks who are using more traditional methods of childcare, unlicensed childcare, because they don't have access to the existing system. The cliff effect, and for those of you who are unfamiliar, a cliff effect is when there's a line at which you will not continue to receive benefits, and that by earning more than that number, for example, you aren't earning enough to replace the value of that benefit. And at a certain point, you just kind of fall off the cliff if you get to that level. And it keeps people from taking advantage of some of the opportunities that are available, because the opportunities don't replace the value of the benefit that they are getting and don't provide for them enough to be able to take advantage of it. So cliff effect, losing public benefits when people start to earn, for example, losing SNAP benefits, childcare vouchers, public housing benefits is detrimental, and a large part of the workforce that's dependent on support programs. Moving to a full-time position might put them beyond qualifying. So how can they work around that for our employees? And employers are really asking these questions also, because their ability to work with the workforce is challenged by people needing to balance how much they earn with the existing supports that are there. This is a challenge around the country, but it really affects a community like Chelsea, where there are jobs that people might be able to take on, but they're wary of taking on or doing enough, becoming full-time or doing it for the full year, because it would put them in jeopardy of losing benefits that they actually need that the job does not replace. So just to make sure folks understand the cliff effects there. All right. Lack of job training programs that focus on skills needed for modern workforce, especially for young people. There's a call for more volume, so more, more programs that kind of meet the demand and help for also for small businesses. Strategy to connect with youth was lacking, and getting them into workforce development. And folks were saying that they're employing a lot of young people through mass hire, but they've got a huge wait list waiting for jobs through that particular organization. And then how we're preparing our students for the future and what they're doing in schools to match what's out there in the community. Are we giving students what they need to be successful in the 21st century job? That's always changing. So preparing the workforce for the 21st century jobs that are out there, and the nature of them, that you're not preparing somebody to do the same thing for the rest of their lives. It really is to get into a profession that's going to continue to learn and adapt. All right. One of the things that was important to this community is to understand how much we don't know about and what the limitations of data are for the undocumented workers, and that we're not able to quantify a lot about undocumented workers and about the availability of employment for them, or the non-availability of that employment. It's hard to capture the accurate rates of unemployment for undocumented workers, or even how many lost their jobs and so forth. But the information that we get from people who are working with the population, and this has been across the board, not just in Chelsea, we know that this population has suffered greater job losses and often are doing that without the benefit of other supports that have been available to folks in the community. We also have no idea how many undocumented workers there are in Chelsea. So, it's hard to think about strategies that support this, or how they've been able to take advantage or not take advantage of other social supports and other programs in the city. We don't have an end to really, or a number to say this is how many there are, and this is what we may need to do to support them. I'm going to move us in directly into the next piece here, which is going back into those small groups and talking about any concerns and issues that we should be taking up. And I want to just say to folks that if you didn't get a chance to put it into that Google Doc, to try again. We'll repaste the Google Doc in here and see if that happens. If you are not able to get into it, please make sure you bring those comments back to the large group, and you can put them in the chat. We'll take them that way also. And one of the things that I really appreciated about what folks did in the last small group was to ask the questions about what we need to know, because we can go back and get some of that information. So if there are things that you think we need to know, please let us know. We'll put it right back in there for the next time we get together and when we start our deliberations. I'm going to go ahead and open our small groups. You go back to the same groups you were in before, and we'll see you back in about 10 minutes. So welcome back, and thank you all. I see that folks were able to make use of the Google Doc, and we got some good information there and questions and thoughts. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to ask if there are additional ones, if you could put it in the chat. We will be sharing these slides with folks as well. And one last thing we were hoping to do today was to just start thinking about other strategies. I want to share some of the strategies for workforce development that folks have talked about. So investment in job training programs has been a big piece. We've heard that from both the focus groups and key informant interviews, youth programming, but also receiving funding to implement training programs with wraparound services, transportation, childcare, et cetera, to make it really effective and available to folks who are doing it, and programs that provide a stipend while you're doing the program so that people can have their essential needs met and really concentrate on gaining the skills of that program. Increasing affordable childcare and early education options, that this would provide for opportunities for people to join or rejoin the workforce if their children could be in school during the workforce hours. And childcare workforce that's not licensed, which is a result of community needs not being met. We shouldn't be blaming parents about that. We should actually be helping people get licensed and get what they need, and to provide the quality childcare that's available there. So these are just some additional notes on strategies, and there is this focus on childcare as well. So some of the strategies are specifically focused there. We were going to ask you, what are some strategies to support small business and strategies to support workforce development, and just some initial ideas of that. We're not going to have time to go through that today, but I did want to say that we are going to come back and talk about these issues with additional information that you asked for, and more themes from our meetings and the community engagement. When we get to meeting number 6, you have another chance to do that. I wanted to review your role as members of the committee. So reviewing information, asking questions. Folks did a great job of that today. bring your experience. Really, we need to have the benefit. Thank you, Myra, today for talking about your experience as a small business owner. Is really enlightening for people to hear. That we're here to think about all of Chelsea and all of the different people who make Chelsea do what it is and be what it is. We're going to be defining some priorities and developing strategies. Again, what we're doing here is making recommendations for investment. So just each time we meet, I just want to make sure that we understand the role that folks are playing on this committee. And we are going to close for today. Our next meeting is, this is where we should go, drum roll, please. Dum, da, dum. I've got my calendar open. I'm going to ask you to ensure that you have your calendar open so that you're able to put this into your calendar. We are together again in very short time. Today is Wednesday, November 3rd. We are back together on Wednesday, November 17th.
And it's gonna be in person, right?
No. These 3 sessions are, as you know, in when we're reviewing the data, are going to be virtual. So next session and the one after that, we do our deliberations, we'll do those in person. This is about being able to share a lot of information ahead of time. And we're also going to be able to provide you some access to additional data before the date of the next meeting. So you'll have, you'll be able to see some of that information and also see some of what we've already covered, and also the available by then focus groups and key informant interview data that's been de-identified. Myra has her hand up, so she's going to ask a question. I'll just ask folks to go into the English language channel in interpretation so we can hear what Myra is asking. Go ahead, Myra.
No, solamente quería hacer una sugerencia. Si
I
para
just
la
wanted to make a suggestion. In the next meeting, if you can please send the PowerPoint, the agenda ahead of time, the themes that we will be discussing, so that we won't come so short of ideas to the meeting when it's our turn to meet in small groups. We'll
So
know
Mayra,
ahead of time.
Mayra says that maybe if in the other meeting that's gonna be, the agenda topics are gonna be provided. So we are not gonna be short of information or of what's gonna to be discussed. So she suggested to get agendas of the topics that's gonna be discussed.
Right, we will do that.
Nosotros vamos a hacer eso, Mayra, ¿ok?
Zoom wouldn't let me out of the other channel. All right, Jenny, you've got your hand up.
I was gonna say, I'm so proud of Maida. Oh my God, she's spot on. She's on point. She's on everything. She's invested. I love it.
Awesome. As you know, part of the imperfection of using Zoom is some of the things that we would have done in person, like we did the first session. The first session we had all the materials, the agenda, the PowerPoint in person in English and Spanish available for everybody. We'll do that for the next session so that folks have it ahead of time or before the meeting starts. And I look forward to our deliberations for that next one. It's a really important one as we're going to be looking at food insecurity and housing. So we have lots of information and lots of content. It's a really important topic for the city of Chelsea. Want to thank you all for your time this evening and wish you a wonderful rest of your week. Night here, those of you who might be partaking in celebrations of Diwali tomorrow, Happy New Year. And those of you who are going to be spending some time with your loved ones and are coming up. Wish you well. It's part of what makes this disconnected COVID life a little bit more bearable, the connections that we are able to make. So I want to thank you for the connections that you made today and for what we're going to be able to do together. Have a great rest of your day. And Chris and Alex and the city team with you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.